Hello, and thank you for joining A Shark's Perspective. Are you, as a marketer, sending a lot of traffic to a call center? If so, then are you working closely with your call center team? You should be, because it's so incredibly important. Then how are you going about supporting them so that they can help both of you be more successful at closing those leads? Marcos Alonso is the Senior Director, Head of Enterprise Employee Support Services at the Learning House, a division of Wiley, and he's a subject matter expert on call centers. And on this episode, we'll discuss how these teams can work in better collaboration, higher conversion rates, the human factor in all of this, how the journey has changed, testing, technology, Glenn Ross, and much, much more. So let's tune in to a call center leader with his friend Mr. Shark on this episode of A Shark's Perspective. Marcos, thank you so much for joining us today on A Shark's Perspective. So tell us a little bit about your background and your career to date.
Alrighty, so my background, I've been in the industry about 12 years. I've primarily been in higher education, everything from knowing what it feels to be in the front seat of an enrollment advisor all the way to being a divisional vice president with just a little bit of a higher view of plan and strategies. I currently am working with the Learning House, which is a Wiley brand. I am in the middle of launching a project that is more geared towards the employer-employee relationship as far as going to school. My actual title is Senior Director, Head of Enterprise Employee Support Services.
Well, so I know you a lot from managing a call center and managing call center teams and helping, drive sales, if you will. So I want to ask you some questions around that. Why is it important for your marketing department to work closely with people like you in the sales team?
I mean, there's a few points there, but I believe in the collaboration piece. The better the feedback channels, the quicker you can pivot and
Yeah.
make changes that can help you, get to that goal. It's going to take a while to make that type of relationship, but it's hugely important, specifically when it starts to not go well. That's really when you have to have that collaboration and that relationship of trust.
Good point. So, as a call center leader, what do you need to close leads better? I mean, what type of information? What's anything and everything? If you could could ask for that today, what would you need to close those leads better?
Yeah, and I think a lot of it, when you say what do you need for the lead, so I believe in, yes, having as much information about the potential customer
Yeah.
as possible. I think is a good thing to do, but there has to be onus a little bit here on the call center because the call center has to be evaluating and assessing the skill set that the center has.
Mm-hmm.
And is it the right skill set for the type of leads that they're getting, and are we closing at the right rate? So yes, the best leads possible with the most information. But I think when you specifically say, what do you need to close a lead better? I think the onus is always going to be on the skill set, specifically the skill set to the leads that you're trying to close.
So I know that when we worked together, every lead that I sent through was gold. Obviously, I'm sure you remember how everyone was perfect. But for those others that you've worked with over your career whose efforts fell a little shy of that, we'd like to know, what do you need that would help you close more leads more often?
To close more leads more often, really, so this goes all the way back to the first question about working closely.
Yeah.
So sometimes to close more leads more often, you need less leads. And I know that sounds weird, but when you're talking about giving feedback about the person or the type of leads you're getting, what information you're getting, sometimes you need to cut out stuff that you and marketing agree is not going to work. It's more of a time waster.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're specifically looking at a conversion rate, I would go with less leads, more skill set, and the leads being what you used to give me, which were golden leads.
So what do you mean by skill set? I don't know if I understood that.
So when you have a group of people or individuals that are dialing these leads,
Yeah.
the skill set there is not just can they dial, is do they have the product knowledge? Are you continuously coaching them to understand where in the buying cycle the person is, and then how do they get them down the process to convert? right? So think of it like this: if you're giving me a lot of leads and we're converting at a high rate, and I have turnover, okay, our conversion goes down. It's really not the quality of your lead; it's more of a skill set, and furthermore, it's more of me not being able to adapt to that loss of skill set.
No, wait a minute. I thought it was always marketing's fault.
Well, that's what you're always going to hear, specifically if you don't have a good relationship with marketing.
Exactly. So, what are your headaches with leads that come in today, and throughout your career? What are the things that were just, knocking your brain upside the wall all the time with?
I think the biggest headache I always get is when people panic. I'm a proponent to try uh, to make things either better or try something new when everything is going well,
Mm-hmm.
because we know what the baseline is for success. So my biggest headache is when stuff starts to dip, everybody has a knee-jerk reaction, and then they're trying to make too many changes, which then puts us kind of on a slide downhill instead of holding fast to what we know works. But again, it goes all the way back to the relationship that you have with marketing.
So, as a marketer, how should we look at helping you in the call center with pacing, with the timing, with the quantity, and when those leads come in? I mean, when you start identifying all of that and the flow that you need to do well, kind of unpack that, if you will.
Yeah, so the pacing and the timing of the leads, one thing that drives me crazy is when you dump all the leads at the beginning of the month and
Yeah.
then towards the end of the month you're really light. So for me, I like consistency. I like the same pace week after week. Anytime you oversaturate, you're going to have a reduction in your speed to lead, being able to get to those appointments. So with consistency, it doesn't cause at the end of the month having low leads, which then ultimately sets up a weak beginning of the month. So when I'm with marketing, I always tell them not to stress and to try to keep me as consistent as possible week to week, as if there was no end or beginning of a month, just straightforward.
So, what were their usual, reasons for why they were sending you too many leads at the first of a month?
So I'll tell you from my experience, and I can't tell you how many times I heard this, but it's just that's the way they did it. Is what they would say. We spend a lot of the money up front at the month, and then we end up running out of money towards the end of the month, so it reduces. And I could never get a straight answer from a strategic standpoint how that helped. Until they took a leap of faith through the relationship, and they did what I asked, which was just to keep me steady through the whole month. There's no need to dump a ton of leads at the beginning of the month, because usually you don't even have the head count to keep up with those leads.
Sure.
Even though they'll dial them, you're not working them as efficiently as possible.
Yeah. So, what are the biggest struggles that you've seen as a call center director when you're building your teams? And is it been the lead quality? Has it been hiring? What are the top things that you've seen that have been your biggest struggles?
Biggest struggles is always on staffing, right? Keeping your staff as long as possible. Usually, there's not. I've never worked somewhere where the pace keeps up with promotion, and when people build skill set and they get to a level where they can now manage a team, sometimes they'll take the leap to another organization, which is great because I believe in propagating leadership. Um, so I think that would be the main one for me. I always take onus on my side over marketing. I know marketing probably runs into those hiccups too, but that's where I would own it.
So, when you hire, how do you look at experience? Since there are so many types of call center teams, I mean, we're talking mostly about sales and lead gen, but I'm
Hmm.
sure that you get resumes of people from success support all
Hmm.
the time as well. And a lot of those call center people who are trained as call center agents may also bring some bad habits due to the industries they've been working in versus others who are specifically trained in exactly what you need, who have that perfect experience.
Absolutely. That's so many great points in there, specifically bad habits and all
You're
that stuff.
welcome.
But you got it. So the reality is, I don't mind starting from scratch.
Yeah.
I'm really hiring. People are going to sit there and tell me all the great stuff in their life and why they deserve this job, but I'm really looking for people that have drive, the things I can, instill through mentoring. So the drive, the want to do better, the I'll crash through the walls. I don't know why I'm doing it, but I'll do it for you. I'm looking for that type of raw material, and then from there you can teach your skill set.
Hmm.
Now, if I take them from a different vertical, say they came from, I've seen a lot come from real estate. For those, it's about bringing them back to what is it that we're doing, showing them the steps. They already have experience, so don't disqualify their experience. It'll let them catch up faster, but you need to break down the process of what is this new process they need to do. So they're still riding a bike. We're just asking them to ride the bike a little bit different.
Mm-hmm. Well, do you struggle with seasonality? I mean, so many businesses, and a lot of customers don't even think about this, but there are a ton of businesses who have their peaks and valleys with seasonality. You know, it's not like everybody ramps up for Easter for one day a year and pour everything you have into that, but education has seasonality. You know,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of different home services industries have seasonality. I mean, there are a ton of things that have seasonality. How do you sort of look at that with staffing and with maintaining your team and building them up and so on and so forth?
Yeah, so it's a great question because seasonality in education, everybody knows it. Traditional time to start to go to school. So obviously, you always want to be ready for seasonality because it is your kind of your Super Bowl,
Yeah.
right? That's when you're going to make it or break it. So when there's no seasonality, that's really where you want to be strategic. So if you're at the level where you're setting budgets and understanding how the year is going to play out from a perspective of your goals, you need to set your goals accordingly. Obviously, if you're going to go for the goal, it's going to be during seasonality, and then you'll have smaller of a stretch goal when there's non-seasonality. Non-seasonality, I use it as the time where I am bringing on new people. I'm doing all my practice games. I'm making sure they're building their skill set through the tougher times, so I am ready for my Super Bowls when there is seasonality. So seasonality, I bring it on as this is the time when I rebuild teams. This is when I assess and build skill set. But again, I have the luxury of setting my goals for the year. Obviously, I will make the organization's goal and probably a little bit more. But if you can set it that way, your non-seasonal times is really the times that you need to be ready to get people for your Super Bowl, which is going to be seasonality.
So then this kind of brings up another point with seasonality. We often talk about in marketing how the customer's experience has changed, and so many different
Mm-hmm.
customers today do research before.
Mm-hmm.
That's especially true, obviously, in education. But have you
Yes.
seen the length of time that you need to nurture a lead and keep it, strong and engaged through the funnel change that time period?
So that's great. And I was just talking about this process with a colleague of mine, but you're absolutely right. It has changed. When I get a lead, and this goes back to when I was telling you that maybe less leads is better. When people at this point in time ask for information, they have made about 80, 90% of their decision. So by the time
Wow.
we catch up to them, they're ready to get into the real nitty gritty of the process and figure out where they're going to go to school. So for me, with marketing, I work up front. What is that experience that they're doing at home, right? So I compare that to you browsing Amazon and making all your decisions based on reviews and based on how the presentation is. And then when you go to hit it to your cart, that's kind of when I come in because that's really when they're going to want to talk to the school or an advisor to get the pertinent details of making the purchase per se.
And does that change the way that you train your own people to handle it differently?
Yes, absolutely. Now it's not the standard, you know who you are. Let's find out what you want. All this. It's more about quickly understanding where you are in the buying cycle.
Sure.
So you'll realize that a lot of people are not like, oh, I just thought about it yesterday. Most people, as soon as you start asking probing questions, you can identify that they're probably 90% convinced of what they want to do already, and it's understanding how to catch on to that and get parallel with them to make sure that they can go through the process with you.
So a lot of times we talk about, in marketing, the amount of lead time through attribution to close a sale. In a lot of
Hmm.
industries, the time is completely different. I mean, if you're going to buy a makeup brush, then maybe that's a purchase you see online and within 10 minutes you're done and ready to go. If you're looking for makeup brushes, that is.
Hmm.
If you're looking at luxury automobiles, it may be something completely different. If you're looking at education, then you're probably talking about at least a 6 month lead time before you've made your decision to where you're actually signed on the dotted line. So how do you look at that nurture time. I mean, obviously there are some things that can do, but from a
Hmm.
sales support call center angle, how do you help continue to nurture those leads throughout the journey?
So again, to the previous question, it's not taking 6 months anymore, specifically on the education side. It is taking, actually right now it's only taking as long as it takes a school to be able to process the student and see if they're acceptable, if they're
Well,
accepted or
let me
not.
let me back that up then. So from the time they saw an ad and clicked on it,
Hmm.
that journey is looking at
Yes,
as a much longer time period.
absolutely.
So your journey is once they get to you, and then they start to function together. But when you talk about the symbiosis of marketing and the sales in the call center, it's a
Hmm.
much longer journey from when they click through an ad to when they're on the phone with you to where they're closed for a sale.
Yes, absolutely. You're right. So, so on that aspect, with marketing, I meet and we figure out when are we launching campaigns? What are our campaigns about? Are they reflecting on seasonality, non-seasonality? Are we talking about, informative call to action? So that whole 90% that's happening, which is the 6 months that you're talking about upfront, that's when you need to have. That's where marketing, I think, is the onus, right? They need to come up with identifying the buyer and coming up with the most modern way or the most millennial way
Mm-hmm.
to connect with them, to get in their level, to help them through that process, and specifically to requesting information.
So with tech and automation and all the things that a typical CRM can provide, what gets you excited about the changes in technology that helps you do your job better, your agents to do a better job?
Well, I can tell you just from my personal perspective, one thing that I've seen, I say within the last 2 3 years is even though it's called the call center, I'm seeing less people want to talk on the phone, and most people want to text, live chat, avatar, whatever you want to do. I see that direction becoming more of how we are moving students through the process than actually getting someone on the phone.
And then just the strangest thing when you think of one of the largest purchases you'll make in your life, and you do it through text.
It's the generation.
Yeah.
It's the people like so in 2007, people were not afraid to be on the phone, and they only wanted to know if their online degree was going to be accepted by their employer. Like, yeah, is it real? To now, it's I'll never answer your phone, but if you send me a text or drop some marketing into my phone where I can watch it, they'll immediately respond. So I don't know if it's the disconnect where they're not on the phone with you makes them more comfortable, but it's definitely the trend.
I get that maybe you're seeing that with the younger generation, but for those people, for example, that leverage a call center that are going through, an adult learner going through an online degree program,
Hmm.
for example, are they doing the same thing with using more tech than being on the phone, or is it strictly a generational divide, or is it more of everybody, regardless of the age, is starting to talk more through those forms of texting and tools?
So I'll make 2 points. Yes, I agree with you that with more people being exposed for tech longer, they are more comfortable using that tech, right? But one thing I'll tell you is the people that still want to have a phone conversation because their tech skill is not at the level that they believe it should be, or they're not as comfortable in that modality, those are the students that I see have more problems being able to stay in school,
Interesting.
since the way it's delivered is, you have to be pretty tech savvy to be able to log in, to get on your Blackboard, to be able to do your work through your phone. For us and for people listening, it might be simple. Like I do that
Yeah.
every day, but there's a big population that they do have phones, they do use Snapchat, they do use other functionalities, but they're still not confident in using it to the level that you need to be a successful student.
Well, so then how do you help guide them so that they are successful, independent of the technology they may use versus not use?
Excellent. So when you can identify that, either they divulge it or you start seeing that they're having issues, you immediately want to put them into a system that's going to help them. So
Yeah.
if it's either a class or a way to be able to help them, I mean, you're seeing a lot of AI come online,
Mm-hmm.
and AI is noticing, how much time you spend, filling out something or doing a paper that then is relaying that information to a retention coach, and flagging you as someone that is potentially going to drop because you're spending too much time trying to navigate the technology, which then appropriately you can come back and help them navigate or learn how to navigate it.
So, how do you look at testing all through the funnel? I mean, how do you handle finessing those leads so that you get the best results through testing?
Yeah, so I coach and the skill set that I go after is understanding that person you're talking to,
Yeah.
right? The process or your decision tree it's supposed to lead to the same outcome, right? So the people that are the best at advising are the ones that can mirror the person they're talking to. And sometimes point A to B is never a straight line. It could be back and forth and, a few loops before they get there. So I don't want any advisor to follow a script that's going to push somebody down a decision tree that they're not understanding.
Yeah. Well, then with call routing, how do you look at your Glengarry leads? Do you put those with your best agents, or do you you have to look at whether or not who's going to handle your best agents are going to handle your best leads, or your worst agents are going to handle those, and then they don't close, and then it becomes some sort of
Yep.
self-fulfilling prophecy. How do you sort of look at the Glengarry leads and who gets them?
All right. So I think that making that statement and that decision is going to hurt you. It's going to get you to the point where you don't have leads it's going to get to the point where good leads are not going to convert because what you're saying is, hey, these are my best leads. I'm going to give it to my highest converter. The problem is that highest converter can only convert so many.
Right.
So at some point, his cup will spill over, and then who do you have? These other people you believe aren't good closers.
Jack
So
Lemon.
again, go back to the skill set. Make sure everybody's a closer. And if they're not a closer, they can't be on your team. So the skill set development is crucial because remember, your top performer could leave. They could get a promotion or they could go to another organization or win the lottery. So I don't look at it like, hey, who's going to get my best leads? I know somebody, like I know the people that can get me out of a pinch real quick, but I never try to make sure that my best leads go to a person. I want to make sure that I feel comfortable giving my best leads to anybody on my team.
Marcos,
Yes, sir.
put that coffee down.
How'd you know?
Coffee is for closers. So
That's right.
there are a ton of call centers out there today supporting all types of industries. You see
Yep.
them come and go in communities across the country. I've seen it locally here where it was a big story on the news. They staff up with 1,000 people and then overnight they're gone. So if I'm wanting to staff up, what's your opinion on should I insource and build my own, or should I outsource through a third party service? Can I make the argument for either?
Yep. So this is what it always comes down to is how do you want your client to be treated or your customer? If you outsource, which is great, you can save money, you can take advantage of time zones. There's so many benefits there. But the question that you would always want to answer is, will they treat them as you would want them to be treated if you could grow them in house? Right? When you grow them in house, you build the culture, the responsibility for that customer that you want, and you're listening to all the time. So when you go to think about third party, you're really going to struggle with how do they treat your customer. Yes, they probably get a hold of your customer, but are you going to lose customers because for them it's just part of their job? They're not bought into the belief and passion that you have.
All right, Marcos, you are near the beautiful beaches of Miami.
I am.
And since you were talking to a man named Shark, I must ask, what is your favorite kind of shark and why?
My favorite kind of shark is going to be a great white shark.
There you go. Nice.
Great white shark. And the only reason I say that is because if you're going to be a shark, you got to be the biggest and baddest.
Yes. Thank you. Not enough people are representing the great white shark.
He's the best.
Well, Marcos, it's that special time in the show. Are you ready for the 5 most interesting and important questions that you're going to be asked today?
I'm ready.
All right, here we go. Number 1, the beaches of Miami or The beaches of San Diego where you resided when I worked with you.
Beaches of Miami for sure.
Really? Okay.
Yes.
Number 2, any college or university that you've ever worked for or supported, or Texas A&M, your alma mater.
Oh, I'll go with my alma mater, Texas A&M. That's where you go if you want to be a boss.
Aggie Nation. All right. Number 3, Crockett or Tubbs.
Tubbs.
Okay. Number 4, Mexican food or Cuban food.
Oh, Mexican, 100%.
Oh my gosh, really?
Yes.
Okay. Number 5, and the most important question that you're going to be asked today is biscuits or cornbread.
Cornbread.
And why?
All day long. Cornbread, because when I think of cornbread, I think of cornbread.
Goes with that chili.
Yeah.
West
On a
Texas
cold
chili
day.
you're
You bet.
familiar with. All right, so Marcos, where can people find out more about you, keep up with what you're doing, and more?
I'm at LinkedIn, and my direct email is marcos.alonso123@yahoo.com.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Marcos, for being with us today on A Shark's Perspective.
I appreciate the time to be able to kind of say what I'm doing, and it's good to talk to you again.
You bet. So there was my conversation with Marcos Alonso, the Senior Director, Head of Enterprise Employee Support Services at the Learning House, a division of Wiley, and he's a subject matter expert on call centers. Let's take a look at 3 key takeaways from my conversation with him. First, your alignment with your sales team is absolutely crucial to help you reach your goals, in good times and especially, as he reminded us, in bad ones when things aren't going well. One of his biggest headaches is when people panic. So breathe, everyone. Try something new when things are going well. When they aren't, don't make too many knee-jerk reactions that may provide negative results. Establish a baseline of what is working and then work through it. You can still test because you may need to adapt. Marketers should help the call center team get adequate information about the campaigns ahead of time and any customers that come through the call center. There are enough technologies out there that can quickly tell you more about the customer in real time. Focusing on the customer's journey will help the call center succeed. Marcos and I worked together in the past and did exactly that. And he is true and honest in that he takes responsibility to close a lead better. And that has to also be driven by the call center. It's not always marketing's fault. Marketing and sales are in it together, and they should be to help a customer solve a problem and their single view of your brand. Second, sometimes to close more leads more often, it sometimes requires less leads. That almost sounded like blasphemy when he said it, but he's simply saying cut out what doesn't work. Focus on higher quality leads. Look at the quality of the rep, and you should also look at consistency and pacing. And that's a great point because remember, for a call center, there's a human factor. A marketer can turn up or down the spigot easily with spending more money up front. But how does that affect the workload of a call center team handling those leads? Unless your lead volume drops off a cliff for the same spend, then help control the pace evenly. Not so much that they'll do a better job, but simply realize that affects both of your numbers. And his biggest struggle, like all call centers, is staffing, especially because you're building a skill set, people are changing jobs, there's seasonality, etc. You've got to make sure to closely look at the type of call center agent you have also. Some bring bad habits from other industries. Some may be prone to customer support versus lead gen and sales. Third, he brings up a perfect example of how the customer journey is changing today, even with major life purchase decisions like a college education. But with all products and services, we know that most people now are doing a substantial amount of research today before they even get to a call center. And I quote, 90% are convinced of what they want to do already, and it's understanding how to catch on to that and get parallel with them to make sure that they can go through the process with you. It's so very true. And by the way, since that journey has changed, make certain that you tweak your script to catch that information, and then look at also using a call intelligence software to take those conversations in a call center that can be described by companies like Invoca, for example, and then that information can be used to optimize some of your ad spend. And another point, again, it's a great example, even with major purchases, how so many people today want to use tech and automation also to complete a lot of the conversations. Understanding that part of the journey can also reflect how they might succeed with a product or service if technology is used in that purchase journey. It's another way of getting to know your customer better. Got a question? Send me an email to kenneth@asharksperspective.com. It has indeed been a privilege. Just remember, in the immortal words of Alec Baldwin, ABC always be closing. So go grab and close some of those Glengarry leads and join us on the next episode of A Shark's Perspective.